yeas are 53, the nays are 47. 3/5 of the senators duly chosen and sworn not having voted in the affirmative, the motion is not agreed to.
On this vote, the yeas are 44, the nays are 56. 3/5 of the senators duly chosen and sworn not having voted in the affirmative, the motion is not agreed to. On this vote, the yeas are 53, the nays are 47. 3/5 of the senators duly chosen and sworn not having voted in the affirmative, the motion is not agreed to.
I'm mortified by today's vote, but I'm not surprised by it. We learned in the months after Sandy Hook that the NRA has a vice-like grip on this place.
Just yesterday, we found ourselves on this program asking a simple question. What will it take to stop this ridiculous, circling the drain and getting absolutely nothing of substance accomplished manner of dealing with real and necessary change about gun control? This is not about taking anyone's guns from their hands. This is not about a government seeking to disarm its citizens, getting ready for a takeover. How about we, for once, stop the nonsense and talk about the issue from a specific starting point? In light of 4 gun control measures being defeated yesterday in the Senate, and let's be really upfront here, not everything in all 4 bills was necessary nor crafted to create real change both sides could agree on. How do we stop the excuses? How do our politicians stop from blaming each other every time people are butchered and nothing gets done? It is a harsh and necessary topic to discuss in a political sense. So welcome back the former head of FEMA, now rocking the radio airwaves weekday afternoons on 630 KHOW in Denver, Colorado, Michael Brown, joined by Buckley Fellow at the National Review Institute, Ian Tuttle. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Here comes the tough discussion. Michael, I come to you first. If you look at some of what happened yesterday, it is very evident that some of the language put in some of these proposals was simply there by the Democrats, making it very clear they wanted to make it as painful for Republicans as possible to oppose these amendments. That's instead of actually getting something done. So I talk to you as someone who's been on the inside of politics here. How do we start this conversation and stop this ridiculous baiting?
Well, I don't think we do stop it. And I think, listen to your intro, Ed, I think what we must recognize is that the issue is about guns, and the issue is about the Second Amendment. And what I wish liberals would do, what I wish that Richard Blumenthal would do, what I wish that, Cox and the rest of them would do, is come out and just say, you know what, Americans shouldn't have guns. The Second Amendment is old, it's outdated. All of the tropes that they roll out about, we only had muskets then. Why don't they just be honest and say, let's introduce an amendment to repeal the Second Amendment. Let's go down the path of Australia. Let's go down the path of the UK and France and these other countries, and let's have the real debate that Democrats want to have instead of using this as a wedge issue in an election year.
Ian, I think what Michael talks about there is very salient to this conversation, because there seems to be just so much hiding, so much I don't want to talk about this. If that's what the Democrats want, just go to it. I mean, look, it'll never go anywhere because, quite frankly, that's not what Americans want. But isn't it about time they just showed their cards, came right out and said, all right, guys, let's take your guns, period, and start there?
Yeah, and at least a couple of them are. I mean, you've had this come out over from writers at Vox, and I think Rolling Stone had an article just titled "Repeal the Second Amendment," and some folks at Slate have offered this as well. So it's not in the political mainstream, but it is becoming a part of the commentariat's mainstream. I mean, look, the real problem here is that the NRA, for all of the demagoguing around it, has a 58% approval rating, and despite the narrative crafting of the left, homicides in the United States are at a 50-year low at the same time that guns have never been more popular or in more hands. I mean, there are basically 400 million guns in the country. So Democrats have to reconcile how is it that we're actually at a low point in gun violence at the same time that guns are proliferating at an extraordinary rate, and they can't reconcile themselves to those facts, so they simply pretend that the facts are otherwise and that we have this crushing gun violence problem that's being propagated by the National Rifle Association.
And remember, people, the three of us are not sitting here saying repeal the Second Amendment. We are sitting here saying if that's what the left wants, then stop beating around the bush, get to it, and start the fight there. there, which we all know, quite frankly, simply won't happen. They won't do it, and the Second Amendment will not be repealed. Gentlemen, couple of minutes we have here. Hillary Clinton finally went on the attack here today. She said it. She warned everybody. She had Donald Trump sitting there talking about his economic plans, so she went right on stage. She went right at him, full barrel, and here's what she had to say.
Donald Trump makes big threats, but he has no serious plan to encourage manufacturing, innovation, or job creation in our country. And there is a difference between getting tough on trade and recklessly starting trade wars. The last time we opted for Trump-style isolationism, it made the Great Depression longer and more painful.
So, Ian, here comes the question now. We see exactly what her cards are going to be. How do you feel she's going to do with this sort of attack? And how'd she do in the speech?
Well, I think it's actually going to be fairly effective. And the speech actually was, Hillary Clinton is never a good one for zingers, but she had a couple in there that will be replayed and replayed. They'll be effective sound bites. And all of this, of course, comes on the back of Trump's FEC filings, where you see what's either sort of economic incompetence or economic recklessness within the Trump campaign, which further confirms the narrative of Trump's economic recklessness in his own professional life, for bankruptcies and et cetera, et cetera. So I think this is an effective line of attack. She's actually coming out and saying she's more for free trade than the Republican nominee. That's a bizarre situation. Republicans are going to have a tough time negotiating that particular line of attack, I think.
All right, so let's go ahead and look at this, because Donald Trump says he is going to come back tomorrow, Ian. I only got about 30, 40 seconds left here. Mike had to split real quickly here. So let me ask you, Donald Trump is going to come out tomorrow night, says he's going to unload on Hillary Clinton. 30 seconds. What do you think he'll say that might help counter this? My
suspicion is that he's going to pivot away from the economy, be talking about Benghazi, been talking about scandals, be talking about the emails. I mean, that's the sort of thing that Donald Trump thinks grabs headlines, and so I would expect him to move in that direction as outrageous and sort of inflammatory when it comes to Hillary's past as he can manage.
All right, here we go. This is exactly what we were waiting for, Ian. We were waiting for this time when the candidates would actually start the attacks, and we are now right where we thought we would be. Ian Tuttle, Michael Brown, gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. We do appreciate your time. All right, so we got a few minutes here. Let's go ahead to your phone calls now at 1-877-NEWSMAX, 1-877-NEWSMAX. A lot of what we've been talking about here tonight is about Donald Trump, money that the Clinton camp has. And oh yeah, by the way, there are those people who feel that Donald Trump still has said that he will do it all on his own. And there are people saying, then you should do it on your own, because quite frankly, a lot of Trump followers believe that he's done it right to this point. So just go ahead, fund it, do what you want to do. They believe that that would be the best thing that can happen here. 1-877-NEWSMAX to join us. Charles in San Diego, California. Charles, I think you want to talk about the money, right?
Yes.
Okay, Charles, you got your television up and you can't hear us. Are you there? Now, we're talking about criminals here as well, obtaining guns, Sharon. And again, this goes back and forth.
It's way too easy. They just have to go to another criminal.
Okay, now wait a minute. You're saying we need to make it harder for criminals to obtain guns. How?
Well, first, we certainly have a list of all the criminals in the world. Everybody who's released should be checked.
Well, we don't have a list of all the criminals in the world, Sharon.
Job.
We don't have a list of all the criminals in the world. What about those people that haven't committed crimes?
Well, those wouldn't be the ones to worry about yet. Let's get rid of the ones who have.
Okay, then what do we do then, Sharon?
Because we haven't started,
then, Sharon,
we shouldn't.
What do we do then with those criminals? How do we keep them from obtaining guns? What's your one answer?
Send a gun-sniffing dog to their house on a regular basis.
Okay, that would go down to law enforcement, and they would say they probably don't have the money to do that on a regular basis. It's a nice way to start. Sharon, thanks for joining us. 1-877-NEWSMAX. Michael's in Cleveland, Ohio, talking about the Democrats being hypocrites on gun control. Go ahead, Mike.
Absolutely.
Yes, and the point I was going to make is...
Okay, hang on one sec. I'm still hearing Sharon in my ear. Let's make sure that we get her disconnected, and then let's go to Michael. Michael, go ahead and try again.
Go
ahead.
Well, my point was, and the media has not reported it correctly, and I haven't heard you say it. Two of the proposals yesterday that were defeated were Republican proposals. and would have made getting a gun harder for people on the terrorist watch list and would have provided more funding for background checks. Both of those bills were defeated by the Democrats.
Right.
Okay? So it needs to be clear that the Democrats are the obstructionists that prevented more gun controls from being put out.
But the Democrats are the
Republicans that had already caved.
Would you not agree, though, that a lot of times the Democrats are putting language in these bills to make sure they make the Republicans look bad?
The two amendments that they defeated, none of their language was in those bills. Those were Republican amendments sponsored by Republicans.
All right, but there are
Grassley.
those who are on the Democratic side, though, which are being used, and there's a lot of language in there as well. We're all out of time. I'll tell you what, we could spend a lot more time on this. I appreciate your call. Coming up next, the car coach Lauren Fix joins us, and more of your phone calls right here on the Hardline.